The autumn rain did not fall. It attacked. Sheets of silver poured over Manhattan, drenching the streets, turning neon signs into blurry watercolor paintings, and making even the most hardened New Yorkers quicken their steps toward home. Umbrellas collided. Taxis honked. And through it all, the city pulsed with its usual indifference, a living machine made of light, steel, and ambition. Inside a black limousine gliding down Central Park West, Sophia Harrington sat in silence. 32 years old. Net worth, over $4 billion. Her empire stretched across industries and continents, but the inside of her luxury car felt like a coffin lined in leather. She stared at her reflection in the rain-streaked glass. High cheekbones, flawless hair pinned into place, a black tailored suit worth more than a month's rent in most apartments. The magazines loved to capture this image, the untouchable queen of business, who could silence a boardroom with nothing but a raised brow. But to Sophia, the reflection was just a mask. A beautiful prison. The meeting had run late, as they always did. Another acquisition, another victory, another rival left gasping. Tonight, it had been Robert Voss, furious, red-faced, spitting threats as she coolly dismantled his deal. "One day, Sophia," he had hissed, his voice shaking with venom, "you'll know what it feels like to lose everything." She had smiled politely then, but the words clung to her now, carried on the rhythm of the windshield wipers. Her driver, Marcus, knew better than to speak. 5 years of chauffeuring Sophia had taught him the sacred rule. Silence was golden. The car slowed at a red light, raindrops hammering against the roof. And that was when she saw it. A small figure. Alone. Huddled on the bench of a bus stop, knees pulled to chest. Blonde hair plastered against a too-large school uniform. 6, maybe 7 years old. Tiny arms wrapped around a worn backpack. The child looked like a paper doll about to be torn apart by the storm. Sophia's breath caught. For a moment, the city vanished. Because in that fragile silhouette, she saw herself, 8 years old, waiting for a mother who had never come back. Standing in the rain until her shoes filled with water, praying for someone to notice. The traffic light turned green. The limousine surged forward. But Sophia's reflection no longer held her attention. The girl at the bus stop haunted her vision, as if the storm had etched her into the glass. 1 block, 2 blocks. Sophia's chest tightened until she could barely breathe. Then, for the first time in hours, her voice cut through the silence. "Marcus," she said, her tone sharp, commanding. "Yes, ma'am." "Turn around." He hesitated. "Excuse me." The bus stop. "Turn around." And in that instant, Sophia Harrington, the woman who calculated every move, who had built walls higher than her skyscrapers, made a choice without strategy, without reason. A choice that would shatter her empire. When the limousine pulled back to the bus stop, the little girl had collapsed on the concrete. Sophia flung the door open before Marcus could grab the umbrella. Her $1,000 heels splashed into puddles, soaking her tailored pants. But she didn't care. She knelt down, hands trembling as she touched the child's face. Fever. Burning hot, even in the icy rain. The girl's fingers clutched the straps of her backpack. Sophia pulled it gently aside and saw the tag. Without thinking, Sophia scooped her up, cradling the frail body against her chest. Emma's breaths came shallow, rapid, as if her tiny lungs were fighting a war. "Hospital," Sophia snapped. Marcus already had the rear door open. As the limousine sped through the wet streets, Sophia held Emma tighter, her heartbeat pounding in rhythm with the storm. Her phone buzzed. Robert Voss again, another cryptic message waiting. She ignored it. For the first time in 15 years, since her mother abandoned her, Sophia Harrington acted without weighing profit and loss. And it terrified her. The emergency room lights were blinding compared to the storm outside. Nurses swarmed instantly, but Sophia refused to let go of the girl until a gurney appeared. "What's her name?" a nurse demanded, tablet ready. "Emma Ellis," Sophia said, her voice trembling despite herself. "I don't know her parents. I found her at the bus stop. She collapsed." The words felt like failure. Sophia Harrington always had answers, always knew what to do. But here she was, dripping rainwater onto linoleum floors, watching strangers take the child she wasn't ready to release. Minutes turned into half an hour. Her phone buzzed again and again, board members, her assistant, Robert, with another sinister text. She ignored them all, staring at the clock as if willing it to move faster. Then, the ER doors burst open. A man stumbled in, soaked and frantic. His jacket was inside out, his shoes untied, his face etched with terror. "My daughter," he gasped breathless. "Emma Ellis. 6 years old. Blonde hair. Where is she? Where is my baby?" The nurse pointed him toward room 3. He bolted, almost colliding with the doorframe. Sophia followed, her chest heavy. She found him there, hands shaking as he gripped the side of the hospital bed where Emma lay, for tubes running into her tiny arm. His eyes were wild with fear, but the moment he saw Sophia, something sharper cut through. "Who the hell are you?" he demanded. His voice cracked with rage. "What happened to her? What did you do?" Sophia rose slowly, hands raised, seeing the resemblance in their eyes. The same storm blue gaze Emma carried. "I found her in the rain," she said quietly. She collapsed. "I brought her here." The man's anger faltered into confusion. Then guilt. He turned back to his daughter, whispering, "I was looking everywhere. I thought I'd lost you too." Emma stirred faintly. Her lips parted, and her gaze landed on Sophia. "The pretty lady," she whispered, voice barely audible. "From the rain. You stayed." Her tiny fingers reached blindly, catching Sophia's hand. "Don't go. Please don't go. The bad people might come." The room went still. The father looked at Sophia, confusion mingling with fear. Sophia thought of Robert's cryptic text. The storm outside roared against the hospital windows. And in that moment, Sophia realized this was no coincidence. The storm had delivered her to Emma Ellis for a reason. And Robert Voss was just getting started. While Sophia Harrington measured her mornings in stock reports and espresso shots, John Ellis measured his in pennies. In a cramped 2-bedroom apartment in Queens, the radiator clanged like a restless ghost as John hunched over his laptop, coding for a freelance client before sunrise. His day job, software developer at a fragile startup, barely paid enough to keep the lights on. So he stole hours from sleep, trading exhaustion for a few extra dollars. Because 6-year-old Emma needed medication the insurance didn't fully cover. Because the rent was due next week. Because dreams were a luxury he could no longer afford. On the peeling kitchen wall, Emma's drawings covered every spare inch. Sunflowers. Dozens of them. Always sunflowers. Yellow explosions of hope against a world that often felt gray. His late wife, Emily, had loved sunflowers too. She used to fill their first apartment with them until the cancer drained her strength, and then her life. Emma had been 2 years old, too young to remember the details, but somehow she had inherited her mother's love for light, for joy, for sunflowers. Now she was his reason for breathing, his reason for staying, his reason for clawing through every grueling day. "Daddy." Emma's soft voice floated from the doorway. She was still in her too big school uniform, rubbing her eyes. "Do I have to wear the Tuesday clothes today?" John turned, smiling through his fatigue. "Yep. Tuesday clothes it is." What she didn't know was that Tuesday's uniform was just Monday's washed overnight. They only had 2. But he wasn't about to tell her that. She already carried too much. He crouched down, brushing a tangle of blonde hair from her fever-warmed forehead. He'd noticed the cough growing harsher, the wheeze in her chest. He'd told himself it was just a cold, that kids were resilient. But deep down he knew, her fragile lungs had always been her weakness. "I'm going to draw you a surprise after school," Emma whispered with a conspiratorial grin. "But don't peek until I say." "Deal," John said, kissing her temple. Her skin was warmer than it should have been, but he pretended not to notice. Because what choice did he have? That night, everything unraveled. Emma never made it home. The school bus driver swore she had gotten off at her stop. But she hadn't walked through the door. Hours passed. Panic chewed through John's chest. He tore through the streets in the rain, calling her name until his voice broke. By the time he reached the hospital, he was soaked to the bone, frantic, prepared to beg God for a miracle. And there she was, his daughter, alive, pale, hooked to monitors, but breathing. And beside her, the woman from the magazines. The untouchable CEO whose face had graced every business publication. Sophia Harrington, sitting in a hospital chair, holding Emma's hand as though she had any right. "Who the hell are you?" John had snarled, protective instinct flaring like fire. "I found her," Sophia said, her voice calm but soft. "At the bus stop. She collapsed. I brought her here." John wanted to hate her, wanted to scream that billionaires didn't belong anywhere near his daughter. But when Emma opened her eyes and whispered, "She stayed, she didn't leave me," his anger cracked into something else. Shame, gratitude, fear. Because Emma wasn't just sick. She had been approached by someone who claimed to know John, someone who offered candy, someone she had fled from, confused and feverish. John's blood turned to ice. Robert Voss. The days that followed blurred into a storm of sleepless nights and whispered arguments in hospital corridors. "I'll pay for the best doctors," Sophia said, her tone matter-of-fact, as though money could solve everything. "I don't want your charity," John snapped, though his stomach twisted at the thought of the bills. "It's not charity. It's responsibility," she countered, eyes hard. "I involved myself the moment I picked her up." Emma, oblivious to their war, smiled through her fever whenever Sophia appeared. She asked questions that cut deeper than any rival could. "Miss Sophia, why don't you have any kids?" "Because I was very busy with work." "That's what Daddy says too. But really, I think you're both scared." Sophia had blinked, speechless, as though the 6-year-old had peeled away her armor with nothing but innocence. On the third night, when Emma finally slept peacefully, John found himself sitting across from Sophia in the dim hospital cafeteria. The fluorescent lights buzzed. The coffee was terrible, yet the silence between them felt fragile, human. "Why?" he asked suddenly. "Why what? Why did you stop that night? You could have kept driving. You should have." Sophia looked into her cup as though the answer might be hiding there. Her voice, when it came, was quieter than he'd ever imagined hers could be. "When I was a little girl, my mother left me. I stood at a bus stop in the rain, waiting for her. Hours, believing she'd come back." Her fingers tightened around the paper cup. "She never did. So when I saw Emma," she trailed off, swallowing hard. "Maybe I wanted to be the person I needed back then." John studied her. For the first time, he saw not the CEO, not the billionaire, not the woman who had destroyed rivals like Robert Voss. He saw someone who had been broken, abandoned, left standing in the rain. And suddenly he understood. But Robert Voss wasn't finished. He was watching, waiting, planning. And when he struck again, it would not be subtle. The rain had stopped, but the storm had only just begun. Emma Ellis lay in her hospital bed, chest rising and falling with the steady rhythm of oxygen and medication. Tubes and monitors hummed like tiny machines, keeping her tethered to the world. John sat on one side, his hand wrapped around hers. On the other, Sophia Harrington leaned forward, exhaustion written across her usually flawless face. For the first time in her career, she had spent nights in the same chair instead of at the head of a boardroom table. And she wasn't sure she ever wanted to leave. The morning brought a new threat. Sophia's assistant, Helen, slipped into the room with her tablet, whispering so as not to wake Emma. "Miss Harrington, you need to see this." The screen glowed with a string of messages, all from Robert Voss. "Detours can be dangerous. Funny who you're spending time with lately. Children are such vulnerabilities." Sophia's blood turned cold. Robert was circling closer. She turned the screen toward John. He stiffened, his jaw tightening as he read. "You're telling me this man targeted my daughter because of you?" "Yes," Sophia admitted. "Because I humiliated him. Because I ended things with his son and blocked his company's merger. Because I exist in a world he thinks belongs to him." John's eyes flashed. "Business rivals don't go after children." "Robert Voss does," she said flatly. "Last year he destroyed a competitor by planting drugs in the man's son's dorm. The charges were dropped, but the boy's life was shattered. He'll do worse to Emma if it gets him what he wants. For a long moment, silence stretched between them. Only the beep of the monitor filled the room. Then Emma stirred, her small voice breaking the tension. "The fairy lady can stay, right, Daddy?" Both adults froze. They looked down to find her wide blue eyes staring at them. Her hand, fragile but steady, reached for Sophia's. "She saved me," Emma whispered. "She didn't leave me alone." John's shoulders sagged. His daughter, sick, fragile, yet somehow braver than both of them, had already decided. "If you want her to stay, sweetheart," he said quietly. "I do." Emma's gaze landed on Sophia, who was blinking far too quickly for someone known for her icy control. "You're like my fairy godmother, except you don't have wings." Sophia's lips parted, and in a voice softer than anyone had ever heard from her, she answered, "Fairy godmothers don't always need wings." But fairy tales never last long. By the next morning, Sophia's security detail was stationed outside Emma's hospital room. John hated it. The men in dark suits, the unspoken reminder that his daughter was in danger, the intrusion of wealth and power into his fragile world. "This has to stop," he hissed at Sophia in the corridor. "I'm ensuring your daughter's safety. She's my daughter, my responsibility. What happens when you get bored? When this novelty wears off and you go back to your empire?" Her eyes turned to ice. "You think I spent 3 nights in a hospital chair because I was bored? I think you're running from something," John shot back, his voice low. "And when you stop running, you'll leave. Everyone does." The raw pain in his words silenced her. "Your wife," she whispered. "Cancer doesn't give you a choice," he said bitterly. "But everyone else since? They see a single father with a sick child and more bills than money, and they run." Sophia's hand brushed his arm, tentative. "I'm not running." "Then why do I feel like you're the most dangerous thing that's ever walked into our lives?" Before she could answer, Helen appeared again. Her face was pale. "He's escalating," she said. "Robert's men have been asking questions. About Emma's school. Your address. He's planning something." John's fists clenched. Sophia met his eyes. "He won't stop," she said. "Not until he gets what he wants. And what he wants is me." 2 nights later, Sophia visited the Ellis apartment for the first time. It was nothing like her sterile penthouse. The walls were warm, crowded with Emma's sunflower drawings. The kitchen smelled faintly of burnt toast. The sofa sagged in the middle. But it lived. Emma, pale but determined, insisted on baking cookies. "Miss Sophia probably doesn't know how," she announced proudly. "But I'll teach her." And so the billionaire CEO, who had once dined with heads of state, found herself standing in a messy kitchen, covered in flour, while a 6-year-old critiqued her chocolate chip placement. When the smoke alarm shrieked, Sophia stood on a wobbly chair, waving a dish towel, her hair falling loose, her blouse stained. Emma giggled until she couldn't breathe. "Miss Sophia," Emma asked between laughs, "why don't you have anyone who loves you?" The question landed like a stone in Sophia's chest. For a moment, she couldn't speak. Then, quietly, "Maybe I've been too scared to let them." Emma tilted her head, considering. "Daddy says he's scared too. Scared of being happy. Mommy used to say that. I think you both just need to try." When John walked in, he froze at the sight. His daughter coated in flour, his kitchen destroyed, and Sophia Harrington, the coldest woman in New York, smiling helplessly as Emma lectured her about happiness. And for the first time, John saw it. A crack in her walls. A glimpse of someone real. He almost smiled. Almost. Outside, a black sedan circled the block. Inside it, Robert Voss made another call. "It's time," he said, his voice like broken glass. "Bring me the girl." Sunday afternoons in Central Park were supposed to be safe. The October sun cut through the chill. The grass of Sheep Meadow dotted with families, savoring one of the last warm days before winter. Children laughed. Street performers juggled. Balloon artists twisted shapes into flowers and swords. On a plaid blanket, John Ellis and Sophia Harrington sat awkwardly side by side, both pretending not to notice how their knees occasionally touched. In front of them, Emma twirled in delight, her blonde hair catching the light as she begged a balloon artist for a sunflower. She seemed stronger, Sophia said softly, watching her run. Relief curled at the corners of her voice. Thanks to you, John admitted reluctantly. The new medication the doctors you arranged. It's working better than anything we've tried. They fell into silence, not quite comfortable, but not hostile either. For a moment, it almost felt like a family outing. Then it shattered. A scream ripped across the meadow. Rosie. Where's Rosie? John's head whipped around. Panic clamped his chest. The balloon artist pointed toward the trees. She went that way, chasing a butterfly. But he hesitated. There was a man too. He followed. John was already running. Sophia, in her heels, sprinted after him. The security detail scattering across the park. Emma. John's voice cracked as he shouted her name. Emma. 5 minutes stretched into an eternity. Then 10. The world blurred into pounding footsteps, the rustle of trees, the thunder of fear. Finally, they found her. Emma sat on a bench by the pond, trembling, tears streaking her cheeks. A crumpled candy wrapper lay at her feet. Baby. John dropped to his knees, gathering her against him. What happened? Why did you run off? Her voice shook. The man came back. The one from school. He said he was your friend, Daddy. He gave me candy, but it felt wrong. So I threw it in the pond and ran. But I got lost. Sophia's stomach turned to ice. Robert. She pulled out her phone, already dialing the police. That evening, Robert Voss was questioned, but released. Not enough evidence. His smile during the interrogation was pure venom. The next morning, Sophia made her decision. You're both moving into my penthouse. Absolutely not, John snapped. Your pride is going to get your daughter killed, she fired back. Robert's escalating. He went from veiled threats to attempted kidnapping. What's next? We're not your responsibility. Yes, we are. The words slipped out before she could stop them. Her chest heaved, her mask cracking. You became my responsibility the moment I picked her up, she said, voice shaking. The moment Robert targeted her, because of me. The moment I realized, she faltered. John's eyes narrowed. The moment you what? Sophia's throat tightened. The moment I realized I can't lose you. Either of you. The confession hung between them. Raw. Terrifying. True. Emma tugged at her father's sleeve. Daddy, I want to stay with Miss Sophia. I feel safe with her. And just like that, the decision was made. 3 weeks later, the Harrington penthouse no longer echoed with silence. It echoed with crayons scattered across marble floors, with Emma's laughter, with arguments about bedtime. But danger lingered. Security cameras caught Robert's men loitering near the building. Surveillance reports confirmed what Sophia already knew. He was preparing something bigger. Then, one night, it happened. The call came at 2 a.m. The doorman's voice shook. Miss Harrington, the FBI is here. Her blood ran cold. Send them up. Agents filled the room, sharp suits and sharper eyes. Their leader spoke briskly. Robert Voss has been running an insider trading ring. We've been building a case for months. But he's aware of the investigation. He's desperate. He may try to frame you or use leverage. Including, the agent glanced toward the hallway. Your house guests. John appeared in the doorway, alert despite the hour. What's happening? Clinton's being arrested tomorrow, Sophia said quietly. But tonight, we're vulnerable. As if on cue, the lights went out. The penthouse plunged into darkness. Emergency lights flickered red. The fire alarm shrieked. Chaos. John grabbed Sophia's hand. He's here, she whispered. He's actually here. They ran toward Emma's room. But Robert was already there. He stood over the child's bed, only to find it empty. Emma had hidden herself in the closet, clutching her teddy bear, silent as a shadow. Hello, Sophia, Robert said, his usual smoothness cracked by madness. His smile was wrong, his eyes wild. You took everything from me. My son's future, my company, and now my freedom. I thought I'd return the favor. You're terrorizing a child, Sophia spat. You've lost your mind. I've lost everything. He pulled a recorder from his pocket. But not before I destroy you. Fake evidence, doctored audio. The world will think you confessed to my crimes. By the time they figure it out, your reputation will be ashes. Sophia's voice was steady. I don't care about reputation anymore. Don't lie, Robert sneered. You care. And if you don't, what about them? He gestured toward John and the closet. What happens when you're in prison and the little girl loses another mother figure? When the father realizes you only brought danger? The silence shattered with Emma's voice. She burst from a closet, fists pounding Robert's legs. You leave her alone. You're a bad man. A bully. Robert stumbled, caught off guard. And that was all the FBI needed. The door exploded inward. Agents swarmed, shouting commands. Robert hit the floor, hands cuffed behind his back, his fury twisting into a snarl. This isn't over, he hissed at Sophia. I have allies. People who? Your allies abandoned you the moment the FBI showed up, Sophia said coldly. I should know. I bought them off yesterday. Emma ran into her father's arms, then into Sophia's. For a moment, the three of them stood together, a fragile, unbreakable shield. And as Robert Voss was dragged away, Sophia knew her life would never be the same. The headlines came fast and merciless. Robert Voss arrested in insider trading scandal. Whistleblower evidence crushes empire. Sophia Harrington implicated. The FBI had cleared her privately, but the public didn't care about details. Investors panicked. Board members whispered. The empire Sophia had built brick by brick now trembled, not from market forces, but from scandal and fear. 1 week later, she stood at the glass wall of her 52nd floor office, staring down at Manhattan. The city pulsed below, alive and indifferent. Once, that view had thrilled her. Now it only felt hollow. Behind her, John Ellis leaned in the doorway, arms crossed, worry in his eyes. The board meeting's in an hour. You ready? They'll ask me to step down, she said flatly. Temporarily, they'll say. But we both know it won't be temporary. So fight. That's what you do. She turned. Her voice cracked, not with weakness, but with weariness. I'm tired, John. Tired of fighting battles that don't matter. When I thought Robert might hurt Emma, none of this mattered. Not the money. Not the company. Nothing. He took a step closer. So what are you saying? I'm saying I'm done. I'm resigning. For good. John, search your face. And then what? She exhaled slowly, as though releasing years of armor. Then, I build something that matters. The boardroom erupted when she announced it. Cameras flashed. Investors fumed. But Sophia's voice carried like a blade through the chaos. Whitmore Industries was built on sacrifice, she said, standing tall. On the lie that success requires crushing others. Today, that lie dies with my tenure. She paused, letting the silence build. The world was watching. Effective immediately, I resign as CEO. My successor will be Helen Carter, who has been the backbone of this company for years. And I am establishing the Emma Foundation for Children's Health and Protection Services, starting with a $50 million donation from my personal assets. The reporters shouted. The board raged. But Sophia only searched the crowd until her eyes landed on the back row John, standing quietly with Emma, sunflower balloon in hand. Her family. Her real victory. Later, a journalist asked the question everyone wanted answered. Why give up everything? Sophia smiled softly. I didn't give up anything. I traded an empire for a family. Best merger I ever made. Spring came early that year. The wedding was small. John's parents beamed with joy. Helen stood as maid of honor, and Emma, flower girl extraordinaire, scattered sunflower petals with gleeful abandon. Do you, Sophia Harrington, take this man and his daughter to be your family? The officiant asked. Sophia grinned. For richer, for poorer, definitely poorer now. The laughter broke the tension. In sickness and in health. In burnt cookies and successful ones. I do. The adoption papers were signed that same day. Emma Ellis Harrington, officially forever. The house in Westchester became their home. The yard bloomed with sunflowers. The first floor transformed into the Emma Foundation's headquarters. helping children who needed medical care their parents couldn't afford. Nights were no longer silent. They were filled with laughter, with burnt cookies, with bedtime stories that sometimes turned into whispered confessions about fears and dreams. One evening, John asked her the question quietly, in the warmth of their scarred kitchen. "Any regrets?" Sophia thought for a long moment. Then she smiled. "Only one. That I didn't stop at that bus stop sooner." Years passed. When Emma held her baby brother for the first time, she looked up proudly. "See? Sometimes the best things come from the worst nights." 5 years later, when Sophia received an award for humanitarian work, Robert Voss watched from his prison cell, hollow-eyed. His son, Michael, sent her a letter that read, "Thank you for showing me what real strength looks like." A decade later, Emma, healthy, vibrant, bound for art school, painted a mural on the foundation's wall. She captured it all: the rain, the fear, the healing. At the center stood a bus stop, transformed into a place of miracles. The city even installed a plaque at the real one on Central Park West. It read, "Sometimes the most important journeys begin when we stop." And on rainy October nights, Sophia, John, Emma, and their 2 younger children would sometimes drive past. They wouldn't stay long, just enough to remember. That love doesn't always arrive neatly packaged. Sometimes it crashes into us like a storm. Sometimes it begins with disaster. But above all, they remembered this: broken people don't have to stay broken. Success isn't measured in money, but in lives touched. And family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's the people we're brave enough to choose. Sophia Harrington once built walls no one could breach. But a little girl with sunflower dreams had broken them wide open, showing her that the walls were never safety at all. They were a prison, and love was the key. If you had been Sophia that night, in the limousine, in the rain, would you have told your driver to keep going? Or would you have stopped? Because sometimes the smallest choices change everything.